I'm Seth Meyers. This is Late Night. We hope you're doing well. And now, if you don't mind, we're going to get to the news. President Trump spoke today at the McDonald's Impact Summit. But remember, that's just what they call his physical. When asked on Friday why he got an MRI, President Trump said that it was a standard part of his physical and added, quote, "The doctor said it was the best result he has ever seen as a doctor." Sure, but who knows what he'll see on his second day of work. President Trump over the weekend traveled to his golf club in Palm Beach in what Fox News is calling the only news that happened last week. After working to suppress documents from the Jeffrey Epstein investigation, President Trump reversed course last night and called on Republicans to vote for the release of the Epstein files. It's a little suspicious, though, because his hands were just covered in black marker. Oh, these are good now. They're all good now. President Trump over the weekend announced that he's withdrawing his support and endorsement of Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, in a development that's so crazy, Marjorie Taylor Greene believes it. President Trump on Saturday tested out a new nickname for Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, Marjorie Taylor Brown, and said it was because, quote, "green grass turns brown when it begins to rot." Which is as close as we're going to get to seeing those MRI results. Democratic Senator John Fetterman was hospitalized last week after he fell during an early morning walk. Fetterman is okay, but the sidewalk was totaled. That's right, Democratic Senator John Fetterman was hospitalized last week after he fell during an early morning walk and left with the fanciest outfit he's ever owned. U.S. airports were set today to resume normal operations following the government shutdown, and travelers are going to be so relieved to have their flights canceled for normal reasons. And finally, residents of Worcester, Ohio, have reported seeing a rare black squirrel with a white tail and white paws. That's right, some people in Ohio saw a cat. That was a monologue, everybody. We've begun, I tell you. Got a great show for you tonight. He's a multi-talented artist you love from iconic movies like Jurassic Park, The Fly, and Independence Day. He's back as the Wizard of Oz and Wicked for Good, which opens in theaters and IMAX Friday, November 21st. Jeff Goldblum is back on the show. There's no one like him. There's no one like him. And you know her from her work as the very funny Jenna Maroney on 30 Rock, as well as her starring roles on Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt and Ally McBeal. She's currently starring on Broadway as Mary Todd Lincoln in the fantastic Oh, Mary, which is playing at the Lyceum Theater here in New York City. Jane Krakowski is back, everybody. Very excited to see our guest. But before we get to all that, tensions are mounting within the MAGA movement after Donald Trump attacked two MAGA favorites for their push to release the Epstein files. But you know what? It worked. The media has now moved on from the Epstein story.
A trove of Epstein emails.
Disturbing new Epstein emails.
Jeffrey Epstein emails.
New Epstein emails.
Epstein emails.
Epstein emails.
Epstein emails.
Epstein emails.
Explosive trove of Epstein emails.
Oh, brother, you know what this means? Donald Trump has his own email scandal. Next, he's going to go full Hillary and start wearing the pantsuits. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. You know, in our increasingly isolated digital age where we spend more time scrolling apps than shaking hands, a true moment of genuine human connection can be rare, which is why I deeply appreciated this thoughtful piece of fan mail I got over the weekend.
NBC's Seth Meyers is suffering from an incurable case of Trump derangement syndrome. Aside from everything else, Meyers has no talent, and NBC should fire him immediately.
You guys! They said my name on TV! Not often. It's not often you hear the name Seth Meyers on TV before midnight. Now, as I've said before, I prefer to handle these situations the way you handle an angry driver who honks and flips you off on the highway. You just ignore them, you know, unless you're in New Jersey. Then technically, that's a marriage proposal. I do, Angelo, you stupid son of a bitch, I do! I'm also aware that being attacked by the president this weekend doesn't make me special in any way, shape, or form. I was simply on the same list as Christopher Wray, James Comey, Indiana Republicans, Thomas Massie, Rand Paul, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and former President Joe Biden. In fact, the only person who Trump didn't seem to be mad at was Sean Connery, as he posted a 2008 article about Connery praising Trump's golf course with the words "blast from the past." And I think it's a bad sign when the most positive thing someone said about you this weekend was from an article 17 years old by a man who died 5 years ago. But who am I to say, to quote the late, great Sean Connery, "You're the man now, dog." I want to clarify that I take no issue with the president voicing his displeasure with my show. That is his right, and on a lot of nights, he's got a point. But I would like to unpack this sentence from Trump's post about me. He was viewed last night in an uncontrollable rage. Not to repeat something I'm sure you've heard many times over the years from your English teachers, but what's with the passive voice, my man? I was viewed by who? Was it you who viewed me? And did you view me exhibiting an uncontrollable rage, or did viewing me send you into an uncontrollable rage? I'm only asking because I want to be helpful. He was viewed last night in an uncontrollable rage, said he. Sounds like something a dowager countess says in a Victorian murder mystery while she's staring out the drawing room windows. My nephew would never take a human life. At the same time, he was viewed last night in an uncontrollable rage. No, I will also admit to being confused as to what set Trump off this time. A few weeks ago, he posted his displeasure with me and was very specific that he was upset about how I talked endlessly about electric catapults on aircraft carriers. So catapults set him off last time. What was it this time? Well, he posted on Saturday and referred to last night, which means it was probably something I said on Friday, but our Friday show was a repeat. Which repeat? The catapult show. So it was the catapults again. And with respect, Mr. President, you can't get mad a second time for the same thing when it's in a repeat. That would be like Rachel getting mad at Ross for cheating on her every time someone watched that episode on streaming. And in his defense, he thought they were on a break. But when you accuse me of Trump derangement syndrome, I take that diagnosis seriously, because you're clearly a medical expert, as evidenced by your description of your recent MRI.
Mr. President Rosella, could you tell us why you needed to get an MRI? I understand that the results were good, but what was it for?
Because it's part of my physical. The doctor said it was the best result he has ever seen as a doctor, and the result was outstanding.
Is it your brain?
No,
heart?
I have no idea what they analyzed, but whatever they analyzed it well.
When you get an MRI, they almost always tell you what they analyze, and if you don't remember, then they definitely analyze your brain. You know that cognitive test Trump claims he aced? I guess the first question wasn't, why are you here? Although that's probably a follow-up Trump would prefer to get instead of the questions he got this weekend, which were mostly about his feud with Republicans over the Epstein files.
The latest MAGA civil war has begun, and it is between Donald Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene, all over the Epstein saga. Trump shocked the political world last night when he officially unendorsed the congresswoman who has been calling for the release of the Epstein files. Greene fired back at Trump's attacks on X, writing, quote, "He's coming after me hard to make an example to scare all the other Republicans before next week's vote to release the Epstein files."
Greene now says she's facing threats that are, in her words, being fueled and egged on by the most powerful man in the world.
Greene says her life could be at danger because of the rhetoric.
Her life is in danger? Who's that?
Marjorie Taylor Greene, he says.
Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't think her life is in danger. Frankly, I don't think anybody cares about her.
You spent all weekend attacking her, and now you're saying nobody cares about her? You sound like a jealous ex. Oh, Jessica's posting photos from Cancun with her new fiance? I didn't even see those. Second, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I finally have something in common with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Trump's really bringing the country together. The only difference is, she got a cool nickname. Marjorie Taylor Greene is way cooler than Marble Mouth Myers. To be fair, he had time to workshop his nickname for Greene. Before he came up with Marjorie Taylor Greene, he posted, and this is real, Marjorie Taylor Brown, green grass turns brown when it begins to rot. And as a rule, a nickname isn't a banger when it needs a super long parenthetical to explain it. It's like if I posted, did another closer look about Donald J. Trumpachet. A trebuchet is a type of catapult, and Trump is obsessed with them. Also, the J in this case stands for just stop talking about catapults already. Now, you might be surprised that the president is beefing with members of his own party, but it's because they spent years calling for the release of the very same Epstein files that Trump has since called a hoax.
Seriously, we need to release the Epstein list.
Who has Jeffrey Epstein's
Black Book?
Black Book?
FBI. That's under direct control of the director of the FBI.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
We have flight logs, we have information, names. That will come out.
Everything's going to come out to the public. The public has a right to know. Americans have a right to know.
Why do they want to make this Jeffrey Epstein story go away so bad? That Jeffrey Epstein story is a big deal. Please do not let that story go.
First of all, cool shirt, dude. I'm sorry they didn't have it in your size. I didn't know the Founding Fathers even had merch. Personally, I'm a fan of the Ben Franklin beach blanket, but I also love the matching beer koozie that says, "We the people are about to get faced." Second, that was Dan Bongino, who is now the deputy director of the FBI, and yet anyone who thought an FBI under his leadership would get to the bottom of the Epstein scandal has been disappointed.
A new Justice Department memo reveals that the Justice Department has no evidence that convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein blackmailed powerful people or kept a client list or was murdered in prison. The memo, first reported by Axios, is a sharp turn from the Trump administration's insistence that there was much more to uncover.
Investigators say they found no incriminating client list of Epstein's, no credible evidence that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals, and no evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties.
What? You can't rile everybody up with a bunch of podcasts and then expect them to be happy with a memo? That's like if after The Rock yelled, "Can you smell what The Rock is cooking?" you got a text that said, "Beets." So this weekend, Trump sought to quell the MAGA furor by ordering an investigation, but only into Democrats, which even some Republicans fear could be another delay tactic.
You know, the president's been saying this is a hoax. He's been saying that for months. Well, he's just now decided to investigate a hoax, if it's a hoax. And I have another concern about these investigations that he's announced. If they have ongoing investigations in certain areas, those documents can't be released. So this might be a big smokescreen, these investigations, to open a bunch of them as a last-ditch effort to prevent the release of the Epstein files.
How dare you accuse the president of setting up a smokescreen? For one thing, I don't think he's nimble enough for that. If Trump threw down a smoke pellet, he wouldn't run away. He'd just stand there coughing until the smoke cleared. Oh, I was hoping you'd leave. So reporters asked Trump last night about Massey's statement. All Trump had to do was make clear that he is sincerely interested in getting to the truth.
Representative Massey says he's concerned that the Epstein probe you are calling for could be a smokescreen to block the release of more files. Is that the case?
Well, I don't want to talk about it because fake news like you're a terrible reporter, and fake news like you, they just keep bringing that up to deflect from the tremendous success of the Trump administration.
Nailed it. Everyone knows the least suspicious thing you can do when someone asks you about a scandal is to say, "I don't want to talk about it," and then immediately insult them. Try that next time your spouse asks why you got home so late. "I don't want to talk about it. Also, you're a cook." And I think that puts an end to that. Nothing seems to be tamping down the story. Even when Trump did a 180 and called on Republicans to vote for releasing the files, it raised more questions.
A major flip-flop from President Trump has just supercharged the effort to make more Jeffrey Epstein files public. The president is now telling House Republicans to go ahead and vote for a discharge petition demanding the release of the files. This after he spent months opposing the measure.
But the whole point of the House vote was to force you to release the files, which you can do on your own. So if you're in favor of releasing the files, then just do it. This new position makes even less sense. Okay, fine. I'm telling everyone to vote in favor of a bill forcing me to do something I could do on my own but won't. Thus requiring a vote to force me to do it, which I was against, but I'm happy. Take it back, Wally. Classic Marble Mouth Myers. Marble Mouthed it. You do have me pegged. Go to the end. We'll keep it. We're keeping all this. The president is trading barbs with members of his own party, including some who were, not too long ago, his closest allies. And perhaps the greatest irony of all, Trump finds himself dealing with a controversy that's all about emails. This has been A Closer Look.